everyone, Sparrow Spalding here, and today I'm talking about setting boundaries with your narcissistic mother-in-law. Oh my goodness, this is a toughie. There's so many layers here, right? And there's so many different examples of, problems in this area and situations that I've heard over the years. Sometimes you're just getting into the family, sometimes you've been married into the family for many years, sometimes decades, and it's never ever easy when you have a narcissistic mother-in-law. So let's talk about this. A lot of times the narcissistic mother-in-law is jealous of you, right? She's jealous of the fact that you have her son and you're his wife, and now she's kind of cast off to the side. At least that's how it seems in her head. And if she's more of a covert narcissist, she's going to be really passive aggressive, versus if she's an overt, she might throw more tantrums. But in any case, it's really uncomfortable. It's unsettling. You feel like you're walking on eggshells, or that you can never really let your guard down and be yourself, which is challenging because if you spend a lot of time with this particular person or with your husband's family, then you want to kind of be able to let your hair down. You want to be yourself, and you might feel like you're always on guard, or you might feel like you're shut down, or that even you have to protect your children or your husband, right? So a lot of times with narcissistic mother-in-law, they have coddled the son, and then your husband might have a really hard time standing up to his mom and setting boundaries. And a lot of times, which is really interesting, I've been in situations personally and professionally where a mom will act a certain way towards a son, whether she's either overly critical or overly coddling, and then you ask him about it later and he didn't notice it at all, right? And he's just oblivious. And so really fascinating. And then sometimes too, your husband will revert back to childhood a little bit when his parents are around, especially if he had an overbearing mom, or a mom who coddled, or what again was overly critical. And sometimes there can be a weird combination of both, where they're coddling but yet they're critical at the same time. And it's like snowflakes. No two situations are the same with a narcissist in these situations, right? So what do? Because when you're married into the family, you're sort of on the outside a little bit able to see in more to the family dynamic and the family dysfunction, right? So you can see the BS, and your husband a lot of times can't see the BS because he's lived it. He's like, well, this is just the way it's been, or this is the way it is, or that's just the way mom is. You'll have to get used to it. Maybe sometimes, but not always. And I've heard countless stories over the years about how narcissistic moms will tell you how to raise your kid, tell you every little thing, criticize your home, criticize your clothing, or try to insert herself in decision making where it's really, it's not appropriate. And so what do? How do you set your boundary? And I think in these situations, the key is to come across as gracious yet firm, right? Because if you blow it, if you lose your cool, if you, yell and scream, then everybody's going to look at you like you're the crazy one, right? And you're not the crazy one. You're just the one who's tired of the BS, and you've had it up to here, and maybe you just pop off, or maybe you blow. And so narcissists are great at making you look like the cuckoo. So that's where I think being gracious can really come in. So being gracious, being calm, having the smile, but yet basically saying, I'm not putting up with your stuff, lady, as you're smiling, right? And you're calm. So calm, cool, and collected really wins the race here. And coming up with those one-liners and saying, gosh, I'm so sorry, that just doesn't work for me, right? Or she's telling you how to, your child's fine to eat a bunch of sugar, I fed your husband a ton of sugar and look, he's fine, and right? And so you feel undermined. And so when we start to feel disempowered, so when mother-in-law says something like that and then we feel disempowered, we have to catch that before it takes us over. Because once we feel disempowered, then you can feel the energy sort of draining out of your body and you feel defeated. So we want to catch that really quick, and we want to take the power back. And what you can do is you can do a couple of things. You can just take control of the conversation. Oh, really? So what else did you feed Bob? Right? And get her talking, get her giving you information. And so then what you can do is really cleverly use that against her. So, oh yeah, so he ate, this and he ate that. Oh, you grew up on the farm and he ate sticks of butter. Oh, well, that's probably why his cholesterol is high now. And you say it with a smile. That could be it. Maybe he's just still suffering the effects of his bad childhood diet. And you just kind of giggle. That's okay. I've got him on a real strict regimen now since the doctor told us he had high cholesterol. And, I'm feeding the kids really healthy because I don't want them to follow the path that looks like they've inherited their dad's genes. I don't want them to have cholesterol problems later in life. And so you say it with a smile, right? If they're giving you other bits of advice, like, oh, it's fine to let him stay up late, or it's fine to, let him do this. And, another response is like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll seriously consider that. But for now, they're going to bed at 8 o'clock, right? And so instantly you've taken that power back. You've set the boundary, but yet you've kind of graciously said, I'll seriously consider that. Thank you for your suggestion. You can add that too. Oh, thank you for your suggestion. I'll seriously consider it. Now, you might consider it garbage in your head, but that's okay. You don't have to say that part out loud. But again, you're taking that control back because the narcissistic mother thrives on control, right? I was talking to somebody the other day who has a narcissistic mother-in-law, and she said that she still refers to her son as my Bob, right? Even though he's been married to his wife for over 10 years, it's still my Bob. And that is just such a subtle vie for power, right? He's mine. And I thought that was fascinating. And my friend just, just kind of laughs and grins and says nothing. And, I like to use humor sometimes. And I was thinking to myself, what might I say in that situation? And what I came up with was, well, yeah, I know we're married, but I guess I could still share him with you. And again, smiling, kind of giggling. And right there, you take the power back. You see how easy that is? But sometimes it's hard to be clever in the moment. So these are things that we want to research and, just kind of have tucked away or filed away in the back of our head to use these kinds of statements when things come up like that. It takes practice, but eventually then she'll get the picture, right? And so, what is she going to say to that? We've been married for a long time, but I guess I'll still share him with you. I just think that's kind of funny. So I love using humor, graciousness, but yet still setting the boundary. So if you have to get a little firm, again, it's uncomfortable. At this point, I do recommend that the husband step in. He's got to be able to step in, and he can't step in acting like his adolescent self because she'll trigger that. He might be, you might see your husband like rolling his eyes and going silent. Mom, stop, right? We don't really want that approach because then he's reverting back to his childhood. We want him to say, hey, Mom, she set the boundary. Yeah, I really need you to respect my wife's boundary. Thank you in advance, but I really need you to respect her boundary. Now, here's the kicker. A lot of husbands don't want to do this. They're so uncomfortable. They feel like they're disrespecting Mom. I honestly think sometimes it activates a childhood fear that somehow she's going to abandon them or she's not going to love them as much, whatever the case. But if he needs professional help, let's get professional help. But he really needs to step up because the Bible saying is true. When a man grows up and leaves his family and gets married, he cleaves to his wife. Now that's his family. And this family over here, mom, dad, siblings, they're extended family. They're not the main family. And a lot of families or a lot of men have a hard time with this. Women too sometimes. But that's not your main family. Your wife, if you don't have kids yet, your dog, your pet fish, that's your family, right? This is your extended family. And first and foremost, you have to respect each other. You have to have each other's backs. For him to throw you to the wolves, aka his mother, that is not okay. So those are conversations you have to have with your spouse. And, but in the meantime, setting those firm boundaries, using the humor, using the graciousness, changing the subject, using the one-liners, that's going to really take you far. Now, if you find your mother-in-law really triggers you, then that's a cue for you to dig inside a little bit and say, okay, what's going on in me that she's triggering me? I remember years ago being on a date with a guy, just a date, and he had said, hey, my mom and sister are in town. Can we stop off real quick, and meet up with them? And I had said, no, I really didn't want to. I wasn't ready. And he kind of begged, I gave in. And what was so interesting is his mom triggered me so much because she reminded me so much of my own mother. She was just outspoken, rude. It wasn't pretty. And I found myself actually sitting there. I think I was only there for about an hour, but I found myself having a little bit of an anxiety attack. My heart started racing. I started sweating a little bit. And, immediately in my head I was like, oh my gosh, I can't date this guy. His mother's horrible. And I was so triggered. And I didn't handle it well, by the way. I just got up out of there. I bolted. I became avoidant. And I was like, get me out of here so I can breathe. But looking back on that, it was wow, and this guy, I don't think he was great at setting boundaries with his mom, but that's a different story. And we didn't date for very long, but it was my own trigger based on my own mom that I really had to, look at and say, okay, what's some leftover PTSD that you have from mom that you're still working through, And, I'm glad I didn't end up with that gentleman because I think just being around her wouldn't have been good for me. It just would have brought out the worst in me. So when we heal from things like this, having a narcissistic mother myself, I can do all the healing in the world, but it doesn't mean I should put myself in an environment that's going to trigger me or unravel me, because no matter how healed I am, I'm still going to have triggers. I'm a human being, right? And I'm a work in progress. So I just choose to not put myself in those situations because, it just may not be pretty. And graciousness only goes so far. But at the end of the day, when that person's giving you a pit in your stomach, then that's a sign. You can't spend a whole lot of time around that person. So I know you know what I mean, especially if you have narcissism in your family or extended family. So if you like this video, please click the birdcage below and subscribe. And please go to my website, sparrowspalding.com, and check out my books. I have a few other fun goodies on there for you. As always, hug yourself from me, and I'll see you next time.